Hi everyone, thanks for joining me from where I'm from, 114 with Jessica. Oh, I'm Allison. And what have you been reading? I read Nothing Good Can Come From This by Christy Coulter. She has a new book out, Exit Interview, and I just thought I'd read this before I read that. And it's a lot about, if you can tell from this graphic on the front, about sobriety. So I thought it was interesting and well written. As a female in a position of leadership. I'm trying to accept Jessica. Third time's a charm.
Hi, Allison.
Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I mean, considering the world, I'm doing okay.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. It is,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah. But thank you for having me. This is my first Instagram Live.
oh,
Sorry for the problem connecting.
no, you
Um,
did
but
great. For some reason, it often takes three times of me saying, and join,
okay.
and then it works. So, um, you'll probably be doing more of these when your book comes out.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate you getting me over the phobia of the technology and showing up live. So, and hi, everyone.
Yes,
It's nice to see
it
people
is
are joining.
nice.
Yeah.
Hi, Jessica's friends. Thanks for being here. Um, yeah, so you can read your poem whenever. I know Jessica because I went to a webinar where you were speaking about your forthcoming memoir,
Yeah.
which has the best title ever. And what is it?
It's The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards. And it's actually a love story, a posthumous love story in a sense. So it starts out in a bit of an angry place, but it doesn't stay there. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it actually I just got my author site put up yesterday.
Oh,
And so it's exciting that things are happening. This is my first book.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited and nervous about it. But yeah, why don't I get going with the poem?
Sounds good.
Yeah, and George Ella Lyon's poem so beautiful. I'm not trying to
Oh
replicate
no,
to replicate.
no one
Yeah,
is. And
this is okay.
I don't know if you've noticed, but we are social media friends. So she does like oftentimes the poems and the posts, and I think she's just joyful that we're talking about her poem and talking about poetry, and it's her attitude towards it has been very powerful for me. It's like, people are talking about my work. That's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Well, it's an inspiration, that's for sure. So, all right, here I go. Where I'm from. I am from Lemon Pledge, from Kraft Dinner and Vicks Vapo Rub. I am from tidal pools, briny, quivering with ribbons of spiny exotic life. I am from tall stalks of wheat, swaying in unison with a sun-baked wind. I'm from hockey night in Canada and being seen but not heard. From Tom and Bonnie playing cards around the table and having one too many times. I'm from Come On Down, and here's the story of a lovely lady. I'm from Casey Kasem's Countdown, Sunday Eggos, and the sticky sap of Catholic laps. All the guilt with none of the salvation. I'm from biting winters, nipped fingertips, prairie blizzards who will kill you for failing in humility. Hawaiian pizza with green pepper and bacon eggers with green onion. I am from my mother at 2 years old, slipping through the wooden hole, landing with a squelch at the bottom of the outhouse. Her mom and brother searched the farmyard. No one can say why she didn't cry out for help. I am from a grandmother who taught us both. You wash off the muck and keep going.
That was beautiful, Jessica.
Thank you. Oh goodness. I'm an easy crier,
Me
but
too.
yeah, I thought I could get through this one. And honestly, Allison, I watched quite a few of these and they're beautiful. And I sort of thought I could maybe like skate the
Mhm.
surface a little bit and not not have to come in with so much feeling. But when you're writing about home, it's like impossible kind of not to go down to the deep places. So yeah, this is
Yeah.
an amazing endeavor that you're doing. Yeah.
And isn't it also, I mean, I don't know if you find this when you're writing, but for me, when I start getting emotional, I know I've hit on something that's worth for further exploration, like
Yeah.
if it's like getting that in me, um, it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I think that that is one of the ways of knowing that you're striking gold in your writing. And if you're bored, then what you're writing is probably boring. So there's a good like interior guidepost there for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know. I'm an easy crier and laugher both. And um I try not to cry at other people's poems because I know that doesn't help them when I'm crying. So I'm just smiling like you can do this. But yeah, I get it. I also think it's an emotional time, in the world and personally. And I don't know. I also we've been having a lot of conversations in our house around death because it's in the air and the grief and it's fall and you probably wrote about people who are no longer with us.
I did.
Yeah.
Actually, yesterday was the 25th anniversary of my dad's passing.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I think this time of year is
Yeah.
it's we're transitioning and it is. I think that's why so
Yeah.
many of the holidays around the world this time of year are about dying. So
Yeah.
yeah,
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 because you feel this kind of like, I don't know, the world, our ghosts feel closer in some way, I think,
yeah,
this time of year.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I get
absolutely.
it.
I
So
feel that too. So yeah, funny timing
yeah.
to
Yeah.
show up here today. So yeah.
So what was the experience like for you writing? Was it emotional or was this the most emotional you felt sharing it?
I always felt emotional saying my mom and dad's names both. My mom just passed away last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so oh thanks. Yeah, she was awesome. The outhouse story is
So
just
she
the
was
beginning of her very
two
storied life.
when this happened?
Yeah, yeah,
She was two.
yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
and they lived on the farm. And I just this morning I was thinking about like what was that like for my grandma to clean her up because they didn't have running water. They just had a
Right.
well, and so it
Right.
would be like you have to like go pump like yeah like
Right.
what a mess. But anyway, yeah, no, my mom was a super adventurous, fun loving, great lady.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, yeah. And so the process of writing, yeah, it was harder than I
Mm.
thought. I had to go deeper than I thought, and um I read it to my sister last night and she co-signed everything. So I feel like I nailed the specific details of our childhood pretty well. So that part was fun. It's nice to think back to some of those really old memories that we don't call up all the time.
No.
Yeah.
For me, that's the pleasure of listening to these because so much of what people are sharing is not something they talk about, even though it's there in us. It's not something we verbalize very often. So it's a privilege to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah, I'm in love with this project. I'm definitely gonna be following it for a long time. So
And well, thank you. And Lemon Pledge is a strong one. You are not the first person to mention Lemon Pledge, and
oh, is
I
that right?
don't
I
think
didn't
you'll be
see
the last.
I didn't see any others, but my sister and I, like our Saturday was our chore day, and so we would,
Mhm.
I think we overdid it with the pledge, and we discovered that if you overspray it onto linoleum, it makes it really slippery. So we're like, let's make a skating rink, and we sprayed lemon pledge all over the whole line out and skated around, and it was the best time ever, until our dad like came home and wiped out things back out,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, but yeah, I guess. Whoever makes lemon, I don't even know, I haven't bought lemon pledge. Can
It
you still
still
buy it?
exists. In fact,
Yeah.
I sort of repost the poems over time, and one I just reposted had Lemon Pledge in it, and she said that her mother still uses it because
Interesting. Yeah.
people commented on it, like, oh, Lemon Pledge, that's like evocative for me too, and then because it is for me too, and that was a chore I actually sort of enjoyed sometimes because of I don't know, it felt very powerful. The
getting
Lemon
that, I know.
Pledge.
It's like aerosols are not the best.
No,
It was a
it's
like there
terrible.
was a real kind
Yeah.
of like magic in it, and then the
Hmm.
smell, and then it looked so pretty when it was a satisfying chore. And you
Yeah.
should like look at like getting some kind of endorsement for this series. Not that
See, it's
everything needs
still alive, lemon
monetization, but
pledge.
yeah,
Um, and I think, like you say, the aerosol, the smell, and I think for me, it felt very like a metaphor for being a grown up, much like it just when you were talking about it, a checkbook. A checkbook was also a thing that I coveted and wanted to have. And now I have one, and it's really not the same experience as when you're a child and you imagine writing out checks. But because I
yeah.
didn't really understand banking
No,
probably too well.
but
Um,
I think that the steps of like balancing your checkbook, do you know what I mean? Because now it's like kids think you pay for things with your phone. Like it's like there's a whole bunch of steps like of the truth of what's happening when you spend money that are in a checkbook that aren't in the
yeah.
digital banking. So yeah.
And they remind you in a different way than a credit card statement ever will, or, like I don't know, the pen you used and the thing you paid for. And it's just, I still write things in my checkbook ledger, even though I don't balance it because of electronic banking. But I still do write. I don't know. As you can probably tell if you have watched this, and I've been doing it for well, I've been doing it for 2 years, I guess now. I like habits. I like
Yeah.
ritual.
Yeah. I see. There's power in it. The power of
Mm-hmm.
returning, the power of even the ephemera that you create
Mm-hmm.
um, through the doing of those actions. So
Yeah.
something to come back to.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a way to remember people too, like you remembering your parents and your grandparents, and through the the habits they had. I mean, those are the things that really stick with us. And I notice my kids saying things about habits I have. Some I'm aware of, some I'm not, but they're obviously making an impact on them. You know.
And anything that you were surprised that they noticed?
Um, I don't know. It's that's a good question. What I will think about further. I think it's just. I think I'm often reminded of something I know is true, but you know how much power we have in our own children's lives by just being ourselves, and I try to take that really seriously, um, and not do things that I don't want them to carry with them. But
Yeah.
obviously, there are unconscious things, just like anything in life that we do, and yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've thought because I had my son when I was in my mid 30s,
Mm-hmm.
so I had seen some other people like already kids like teenagers
Mm-hmm.
by that time, and so I was kind of trying to begin with the end in mind, and like knowing that 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 he's going to have his own stuff, and the less I can sort of transfer mine onto him, the better off we'll both be. But it's impossible.
It's impossible.
It is, yeah.
And I think I'm pretty good at saying like, "Oh, sorry, this was my shit." Late if I in the moment I lose track of it, at least later I can usually identify, hey, this was me upset about something that is old and not your problem, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's the nice thing is like, even if something goes wrong in the moment, we can always loop back around. It's never
yeah,
too late to
apologies are pretty powerful.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So back to your poem and your experience, because you just wrote a memoir, but you weren't. So, like, what was the difference? Obviously, a memoir, you wrote about your husband, but I'm sure you also wrote about before your husband.
Yeah, I did, but not so
Mm-hmm.
much. So I really, y- yes. So I'm used to writing memoir. A lot of what I write is nonfiction. So for writing the poem, I was in my wheelhouse for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But in at least the memoir that I wrote, it was about a specific event,
Yeah.
and so I was really trying to tell one story,
Yeah.
and to just bring in just enough that people would understand I came from
Mm-hmm.
somewhere, had parents and grew up somewhere, but
Right.
it's not really, I don't spend a lot of time in my childhood or any of that. So it was actually nice to kind of think back and bring in some of those things that aren't in my book at all, because yeah, my I think if you're famous, you get to have a bit more of a comprehensive memoir. But yeah, when you're writing for a reader as
Yes.
an unknown person, it's like you pretty much have to stick to
Yes.
the story that
Well, and
is.
I don't want a comprehensive, but it's like, I mean, usually, because I don't actually love celebrity memoirs in general, because I'm just like, oh, I don't need to know the laundry list of things. That's not why I'm here. So I love the focus, and that's something I certainly have grappled with in writing my own memoir. Like, what is the focus? What is the message? And I appreciate all the work that memoirists put in so that we as readers don't have to do that work
Yeah,
and trying to figure
it's
out what this message is or what the story is,
yeah,
like,
yeah. I think that's like the bulk of the first part of writing is
right,
just figuring out what the story is. And I love
for sure.
Marion Roach Smith is a memoir teacher that I like and follow, and she has an algorithm for doing it. It's like it's about X as illustrated by Y to be told in a Z or Z as we say in Canada.
Yes.
But it's just like figuring out that thing, like what is the through line is yeah, I think that like for me, that came after the first draft of writing my book to just figure out like what do I have and what's the story. So is that kind of what it's like for you
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, and well, yeah. I mean, I was writing different things. I keep trying to remind myself that it's worth doing things imperfectly because otherwise I don't do things. And that was definitely with the writing. Like, just, I just saw someone too, I can't remember who it was, saying just write what you want to write about. Just keep doing that until you figure out what that all means together. And so I did do that. But in order to really get in there to dig in, I did have to kind of know the structure for me because
Yeah.
that's
Is
how
this
I am.
something to organize around?
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I think both of those
And then
things are
I
important.
tossed that out and came up with a new structure, but I had to have one that was something. I just couldn't because I knew I was never going to write chronologically or like a laundry list because those
Yeah.
aren't the books I read. Nobody's really cares about it. Like you say, I'm not famous. So I knew it wasn't going to be that. So I had to figure out some other way in because I do really love structure. Like I'm a nerd and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, me too. And I think like that it's also I think when you're doing that, you're also like that's how memory works, right? And
Yes.
so if you're working sort of in
Yes.
tandem with how memory actually works, then it feels like a more cooperative and
Yeah.
generative process than trying to like go BC.
Yeah. I
And then,
agree.
but then what also happens, like for me, is like you end up with these messy pot. Like the structure is a jumble, and then that for is very uncomfortable and hard to like to navigate. So then you have to kind of organize it. So I think it's just these things kind of going in lockstep along
Yeah.
the way, and and then you eventually get to the end. So for everybody who's still in it, you will get to the end if you keep taking steps.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
And that's a
Yeah,
good
and that's one of the
reminder.
beautiful things about a poem. It's so short
Yeah.
and there's a framework. Like it's like so that was it was lovely to be able to like write a short piece that has so much of a life in it. So yeah.
I agree. And I think it's a nice break if you are writing a longer piece. It's nice to take little breaks and write shorter things and be able to say, I did this thing, I finished this thing.
Yes.
There is something, right?
The triumph of having
Yeah.
finished something, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and satisfaction. So
Yeah. Because when
uh,
people ask what you're working on and you say the same thing over and over, it's like, oh, people don't really ask me because I don't really talk about it. So I've moved on in my life. But back when people did ask, and I was like, you know, you'll know when it's done.
how long has it been for you?
Oh, this book, it hasn't been that long for a memoir. It's been probably like 2 years. Not, I mean, I know people take 10 years regularly, but um, I've written a lot of screenplays. And when I was in that process, and I still do, but not as many because now I'm doing other things. But I never like to talk about what it's about. Like for me, it feels like it's in process until it's finished, you and so
Yeah.
I just, even with the memoir, it's like, I mean, it is inspired by this poem in this series. And so I will say that because it became evident that this is a huge, like, framing device of my life now because I do this every week. Um, and I think a lot of my life I've spent unpacking where I'm from. in order to be present now. And I think for a long time I thought I should move on. Like, I'm from there, it's over, move on, you know. And
Yeah.
then you realize
Yeah.
that's not how it works.
No. No, and then there's the quote that I don't know who said this. I better look it up after. But like the past isn't over; it isn't even past. Like the past, and so I really strongly feel that, and yeah, and like 2 years is still a long time, even if it's not the longest in recorded history. And the world is changing, and things are coming. You know what I mean? So the past keeps meeting the present over and over
Yes.
and over, and so
Yeah. And I think especially when people pass on, when you have children, when you have these large life events that occur, they become these watershed moments, you know, when you start, I don't know, grappling with your grief or thinking about people growing up that you are caring for and
yeah,
parenting. And so
yeah,
it's a gift. I mean, I'm grateful for the life that I have. And it's complicated.
yep. Here.
That's my life status. Um, but well, anything else about? I feel like I'm talking more than you. Anything else about your poem or the process? Or so I do have a question. So, did you grow up in Alberta? Because you live there
I
now.
I live in Alberta now. I was born in Saskatchewan,
Okay.
in Regina, and then we moved around in some small towns in Saskatchewan, and then moved to Vancouver Island,
Okay, that
which
was
is
the
by the
tide
tidal
pools.
pool. Yes, yes. And like we lived in northern BC, then on Vancouver Island, and
Oh
I
wow,
loved living there. And we lived
it's
in Port
beautiful.
Renfrew, which is a tiny, beautiful, amazing, like it's just like amazing.
Yeah.
And then when my parents split up, we moved back to Saskatchewan, and then I
Okay.
grew up mostly in Weyburn from grade 6 till the end of high school. So yeah, so there's it's a very flat prairie place
Yes.
with lots of farms, and but also beautiful. I really think people misapprehend it, and when they think there's nothing there,
Right.
it is just as rich and beautiful as the
Mm-hmm.
ocean, but it's different from the ocean. So yeah, I think it's a bit underloved compared to what it deserves. So yeah.
I think it is the plains or the prairies or yeah. It felt like the Midwest here, so Alberta, Saskatchewan.
Yeah,
My
yeah. So yeah, just
but
north
then
of
I was the tide pools. I was like, but that's not there. I know that. So
yeah, and that's a hard thing too. Like the where I'm from question when you moved around a
mm-hmm.
lot. It's I think that's something that a lot of people, especially people that I know who grew up in the military and were moving like
Yep.
every couple of years, it's an interesting question to grapple with. So
A woman well, now I guess it's probably been 10 ago, she grew up in the military in India, and it became much about like the structures of the military. A lot of her poem was about that. You know, that you might change locations, but that structure doesn't change, you know?
that's so interesting, as we were talking about structure earlier,
Yeah.
right? Like it's like they're always, yeah, they're portable. And
It was beautiful. I mean, they're all beautiful. And so this is a question, you talking about moving too, that I often ask people. Did you find you were an age when you were the narrator of this poem? Did you choose one, or did one come to you, or did you feel like it was sort of like a bird's eye view of where you're from?
a little bit of a bird's eye view, but I think that I, like with the Lemon Pledge and the Craft and the Vapor Rub, like I was mostly inhabiting the age before my parents split up. So
Mm-hmm.
like, and when we lived on Vancouver Island mostly. So I would say like maybe like age 10 to 12
Mm-hmm.
is sort of yeah, yeah. Is that,
I find
I
it interesting.
I
Oh,
didn't
I
look
just
for
kind
that.
of
And as I was watching the other ones, I didn't try to notice that. So is that common that people go to that sort of pre-adolescent?
I would say just I'm not doing an academic like questioning of people, but I would say it often seems like we pick a time before something happened,
Yeah, yeah, that makes total sense.
where it's like, oh, the before and
Yeah,
after, and people pick before, you know, because that feels like the most, I think, from like you're from that place,
yeah,
and there's
yeah,
like been a journey associated with that being from there. if that makes sense.
Yeah, because that's where the slide starts there.
Mm-hmm.
That's you land in wherever the next thing is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you feel internally that there has been a journey, like in yourself. And I think for me, there's this strange feeling of it's a real recognition of that person from before. Like she feels in a lot of ways the closest to me, even though no one, barely anyone I know in my life now knows her. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
it's
this desire to bring her to life.
yeah. Yeah. No, I'm I'm feeling that. Like it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, before the weeping begins again.
As this is a safe weeping
Yeah.
space. I write about it more now too, like how I cry and how. Have you read the Crying Book by Heather
No,
Crystal?
no, but I better get it because I have sometimes wondered if part of my like reason for being on the earth is to make crying as socially accepted as laughing. And so I better get that one
I
instead.
thought it was a beautiful. She's a poet, and I just thought it was a beautiful exploration or of she considers herself a crier and just what it means and how we reflect on it. And obviously, it is a very female associated activity, and I think that's part of the reason we have uh, such disdain for it societally. You know,
Yeah.
it's weakness, it's female, it's I think lots of times too it points out discomfort when people would like us to not point it out.
Yeah, I think so too. And I also theorize that it's part of the way that the patriarchy hurts men by not allowing them to cry too.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and telling them that that's weak
yeah.
and that you're not a man if you
Yeah.
cry.
Yeah. So
That the patriarchy doesn't work for anyone, you know. Like,
yeah.
I think it feels important often to say, you know, colonialism, white supremacy, patriarchy, it's not doing anyone any good.
No.
It's not like the beneficiaries of it are benefiting. You know, it'd be better without it. We'd all be better without it.
I
So
agree. I agree. A little more
I mean,
balance
we're
in the world.
benefiting. I'm benefiting being a white person, just to be clear. I know that, like, I have white privilege, but like, it would be much better off with. We'd all be better off without it. The
Yes.
world is not a pie.
Yes.
We,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
So I just, yes, I do think that having emotions is a wonderful thing, and it helps us deal with the life that we're living. And if we're denied a piece of our emotions, it's not
Yeah. Then
healthy.
we're denied a piece of our life. We're not living fully, and then our ability to connect and even to make decisions. You know what I mean? Like I really feel like if we could balance it out, like we would just naturally create a better world because it would be obvious to us what to do.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me,
Yeah.
Jessica. This was a real treat. Thanks for sharing your poem and our conversation, and I look forward to your forthcoming memoir, and I wish you all the luck, because I know that the run-up can be stressful and joyful, but also stressful. So.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and I so appreciate the invitation and the fact that you prompted me to write this poem, because I have this down. I really treasure it. So thanks, and we'll see you from the viewer side next time. Okay. Take care. Bye.